So to help us unpack the numbers and also the wider security picture, we're joined by Chidi Omeje. He's a security analyst. Thank you very much, Chidi, for joining us.
Good
Chidi,
morning, Mr. Chidi.
what are we paying
Morning.
for? Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
you're
Yeah.
welcome. Chidi, what are we paying for? What are we buying? Exactly where are these monies going? Are we forward? Are we putting our foot forward when it comes to insecurity? Or are we simply just taking care of whatever has happened after the instances? States are spending so much, and then the public are not privy to these numbers that are being spent. So it gives you an accountability complexity. So what are your thoughts, first of all, after you saw the numbers and all these states that are spending, some of them not in such turmoil as other states, yet spending much more? Are they doing it right by preparing their states for what might be? Or are they using these monies for whatever else? What do you think, Chidi?
Well, I saw the report, and of course the numbers are quite staggering. And but let us lay some kind of foundation here so that we have a clear understanding of what we're discussing. The thing is, the report has just explained the fact that the Nigerian state, I'm talking about the subnationals, are now being roped into, pardon my word, into matters that ordinarily should be the responsibility of national security, concern, because issues of security, issues of maybe equipping the military or providing logistics for the military, these are essentially the responsibility of the national, talking about the central government, the national security. But now, given the character of the security challenges we have in the country, the states, talking about subnationals now, they have no option than to be part of the whole effort to stem the tide. That is where you see that most of these states, especially those who are, especially the states that are, in serious problems, talking about states that are immersed in crimes like terrorism, banditry, industrial scale kidnapping, all these kind of things. Such states have no option than to put the money as part of their contribution. But you ask a good question: where are these monies going, and are we being fleeced? Are we now? Are we sure that the state governments are not hiding under the pretext of contributing for these efforts to siphon money and then put it elsewhere? These are concerns. But the important thing is that, given the nature of our security challenges, where we have kidnapping, all those things that are well beyond the capacity of even the police alone to deal with, the state governments have no option than to contribute. But you asked another question: where are these monies going? Are they spending the money, in the right places? I will just buying, vehicles and probably buying the communication equipment. There are other areas that we think that such monies should go, and these areas include the preventive measures. How are you able to either spending monies to galvanize maybe community-led intelligence networks, or things that that could have sustainable contribution, not just to deal with the symptoms. Because as far as I'm concerned, the military, the kinetic effort we are seeing are just efforts to deal with the symptoms, but not the fundamentals. The fundamentals are those things, those factors underneath that predispose these crimes or criminalities.
You are right,
where are the monies going to go? So these are the issues, and your question is quite germane, because we have to find out exactly where the state governments are putting their money in.
Yeah, there's also something about the optics when states spend money to buy equipment, and then or you consider whether with these equipments we have the know-how or manpower to actually operate them. Are we not just spending these monies without really accounting for how they're going to be used? But I want us to take a look at the big spenders here when it comes to state allocation for security. Kogi State is at the very top with 34.6 billion naira. And I'm going to go down the list about 8 or 7 or 8, 9 states under. We have Kaduna State, 10.3 billion naira. That is almost like 3 times less than what Kogi State is spending. Now, Kogi State, when you compare it with what other states are going through, Bauchi, Borno, Kaduna, it's not as much as what these states have suffered. but yet their security spend is 34.6 billion naira. So how exactly do we account for these differences in spending in states that don't have as much issues, spending much more, 3 times more than states that have been known to be prone to violence, attacks, insurgencies, and all, spending only 10 billion? Are these states not doing as well as perhaps maybe Kogi State is spending enough to keep its states safer than Kaduna State? What do you think?
This is where the issue of accountability and transparency comes in. And this is also where we have to map the security challenges. You might say that Kogi State is not as a cell as maybe Borno or let's say Katsina or Zamfara. But I must tell you that Kogi State, as we speak now, is becoming an epicenter of banditry. Actually, the kidnapping industry is growing there. So. But then again, like I said, this is where we are concerned, because we want to find out where those monies went to. Is it procuring vehicles, logistics effort, communication? Where exactly did the money go to? And the people in that state, of course, and people who are interested in transparency and accountability and governance should be able to ask more questions, because we must be careful so that these guys do not hide under the pretext of supporting the security efforts of the government, then begin to divert money, all in the name of buying security equipment. We know that what they call security votes, that all these state governors do enjoy. Now, this security vote is one bit of budgetary part that nobody questions. They use the money at their own discretion, but even the kind of expenses they're making now is beyond even what the security votes, because the security vote most times is not just about probably 10-15%, or not even up to that, maybe about 5% of the budget. But now you can see that a whole chunk of money being put all in name of security. And you see, there are implications. It means that monies that are ordinarily meant for infrastructure, for healthcare, for education, have been schemed out to put into the so-called security effort. But the real question is, having spent all that amount of money, what are the results? Are kidnapping incidents coming down? Are communities free of marauding bandits? Are we seeing more confidence in the people that things are getting better, or are things have still remained the way they are all this while? So if you tell me that you spend so X amount of money, I should be able to ask you what are the results, because the results should be able to reflect the amount of money you spent. If you spent 30 billion naira, for instance, in 6 months, I should be able to see exactly what that 30 billion naira have done for communities that have gone through all manner of things. Travelers that pass through Kogi State, for instance, or if on daily basis have sad stories to tell. Because of the activities of the kidnappers. So where are the money going? Those monies going to? But this is not me questioning, the intention of the state government, because I have not actually found out. I think it's left for people to really find out exactly, ask questions. We have Freedom of Information Act. People should be able to ask questions and say, where and what? How did you spend this money? What effort? Where did you plug them in? And what are the results? So, like I said initially, this is where accountability and transparency takes center stage.
Well, Mr. Omeje, you said this is the time for people to ask questions. I think after citizens saw the budget, they asked the question. That's how we found PFIPC. From PFIPC, we've moved to 4 other fake agencies. Now, would you say that the percentage of which Nigeria is more reactive than preventive is high? Because the rate at which insecurity has widened, initially a lot of people thought it was just in the north. It's now in the, southwest and southeast. That is literally everywhere, down to Ikorodu here in Lagos. How do we get to a point where this is reduced drastically? Do we get to a point where we now, scale the governors based on how many preventions they've done? What are the equipment? Even the equipment, have we seen them? Would you say that this is now a cause for us to say, okay, maybe state policing will work? Where is the disconnect, and how do we move past this? Because it seems like we're constantly in this point to say we're spending so much, but the citizens are not seeing that spending. What do you think?
Let me tell you something. There's difference between security expenses made up in security, and then investment in security. I don't know if you understand me.
Yes.
Security expenses and security investment. The monies you use to buy, maybe to procure vehicles, communication equipment, these are security expenses you are spending. But the bigger picture should have been investment in security. This is where you invest in proactive measures that prevent such things to even happen in the first place. Because, like I told you before, this connected effort you see, seeing the military guys out there in the theaters, or seeing the policemen pursuing bandits. These are all responses. But I'm looking at being proactive, preventing them to happen in the first place. Because let me tell you something. That's why we keep saying, do not allow criminalities like terrorism or banditry to birth in your place, because the moment they are there, it is quite difficult to stamp out. You may not be able to see. You may not, exactly, because these things are most times, some of them are actually ideological, like terrorism, for instance, and they're not. Of course, the bandits who kidnap people, these are economic, plunderers who can go to an extent to get the resources they need, and they could be as desperate as anything. So. Back to your question, my sister. You could see how insecurity, this level of insecurity, have come all the way from northeast, where we had Boko Haram terrorism and all manner of things, down to north central, where we have this kind of kidnappings and banditry. Then, of course, northwest, it has become a very big epicenter of this crisis. Then up down to the southeast, where you have separatist agitations that are quite violent. Then you see what is happening is now going from the north central, is now seeping to northwest, especially Oyo, Axis, and all that. And then, of course, in the south, where you have attacks on our maritime assets. So you see that security challenges are all over the country. This is the time for us to streamline the activities, or rather the responsibilities of our security security agencies. So I would know, so I was sure that each of these agencies have their work cut out. The time where, of course, that the lead agency in internal security challenges is the Nigeria Police. There was a time before now, let's say about a couple of years back, you see that police guys sat back. They were more interested in VIP protection. They left the entire efforts in counter-terrorism and fight against banditry to the military. Until the other time when the president said he wants the police to come back to release all those people and VIP protection back into the fold. Even at that, I'm not sure they have complied. So the point I'm making is that you are not able to see the respite you deserve or you expected, because the challenges are quite enormous. And let me tell you, the fact that poverty is increasing, the fact that bad governance is the order of the day, these factors that predispose these criminalities are increasing by the day. Desperation, destitution, poverty, hunger, irritability, these are the things that make crime and criminality attractive to an otherwise good citizen. But because the guy is desperate, he doesn't see any other way out, it takes to crime. But this is not for me. This is not me excusing crime because of poverty.
Chidi, before you go too far, you just said something very interesting. The fact that these factors are what's responsible for the increase in crime. And I'm wondering, these security votes, what should they be going to? Should they be going to trying to make, well, maybe we should treat the disease and not the symptom. And maybe in this case, the symptom is actually insecurity. That's the symptom. Maybe the real disease is poverty. Maybe it's irritability, like you have just said. Do you think that security votes should go to these aspects of daily lives? Do you think that governors, when they get these security votes that we can't question, should focus on trying to make the lives of the people, their constituents, better with these monies or funds?
Let me tell you, see, there is a magic wand that will deal with this situation. There's one silver bullet that will deal with this situation, and it is called good governance. If you place good governance, some of these issues me and you are talking about will be addressed. Issues of poverty. You can see that people, of course, that there are wrong allocation of resources. That there's embezzlement. That there are corruption. That you see inept governance here and there. You see one person stealing billions of naira, then making the entire society living in misery. So these are the issues. I will suggest, or rather recommend to the governors that they should devote the bulk of their security votes to intelligence gathering, community intelligence gathering. In fact, I wrote an article sometime early this year where I talked about the fact that good governance is the silver bullet that will shoot down insecurity in Nigeria. And I said that the state governors who enjoy the security votes, who I'm very sure do not know exactly what to use them for, they use it maybe probably to what they apply it now. Everybody knows is maybe for political gains, to massage the egos of their proxies, and then of course their numerous sidekicks and everything. So if they devote substantial percentage of these security votes to intelligence gathering, to community-led efforts, you will see that it will bear more results. Because I'm looking at the preventive. I'm looking at a situation where you not even allow the situation to come up in the first place. Because once terrorism bursts, once this kind of industrial scale kidnapping becomes attractive, it is difficult to stop it. I don't know how long it will take us, but I can assure you that these things will take some time, except we are intentional about dealing with the root causes. And the root causes is bad governance that is prevalent. It's even worse in the subnationals, because you need to see how these governors treat the funds meant for the states.
Mr.
And of course,
Major,
talking about the local government area, those ones don't even exist in the first place.
You just went right into my next question, because, you've talked about, intelligence and everything. It sounds like it's not rocket science. It sounds like something that a government can do. If we look at the books, Nigeria is not doing bad in terms of resources, the export. Going back to history, we used to give our neighbors light, and now we don't have light. If we go back to all the things, it looks like it's something we can fix. So are you going to say that the problem now we have is the leaders? We don't have political will to make this change. What are we afraid of? Is corruption benefiting us more than actually doing the right thing?
Yeah, you said something very important, political will. Political will is a central factor. If you don't have the political will to take decisions, you are scratching the surface. It takes political will to say, look, this thing must not happen. These funds must go this way. These issues must take this shape. But because most of these, starting from the federal to the local government level, there is clear absence of political will, which is sometimes very deliberate, because they prefer playing politics than actual governance. Because if you have the intention, or the best, if you have the good intention of your people as a leader, as a political leader, there are certain decisions you take that are just that's just a given. For instance, there's no way you see a state being engulfed in such security crisis as kidnapping or banditry, and your priority is to buy fleet of SUVs that cost billions of naira. You're misapplying the scarce resources into areas that are not quite important. And then, just like we talked about just a while ago, poverty is at the heart of this. People have no means to survive, so they now begin to see crime as attractive option of survival. So it's not a rocket science, like you said. We must put our money where our mouth is.
Put your money where your mouth is. Put your money where your mouth is. Mr. Chidi Omeje, I am so sorry. I have to cut in here because we've run out of time, and I have one very important question I must ask you before I let you go. It's about the security votes and the sensitivity around it. As individuals and civilians, we are not allowed to know exactly what these monies are being used for because of the sensitive nature of security. But isn't it about time that, I don't know where that responsibility lies, or where accountability can be, we can satisfy the curiosity of the masses regarding how these monies are spent. How do you think, what mechanism do you think is possible to give civilians the opportunity and access to knowing what these monies go into?
This is because we have weak institutions that is why it's difficult for us to get a hold to this kind of information. Of course, we have the Freedom of Information Act. We ordinarily should be able to rely on that questions. But of course, that we have strong men who are cowboys, and they don't care what you feel. They will not even respond to your FOI inquisition. Then of course we have the civil society organizations that ought to take up this battle, to talk about defense accountability, to talk about accountability in all these areas. There's no kobo in the budget that should be treated as secret. It belongs to people, and the people ought to know how they are deployed. If you say that so X amount of the or X percentage of the budget is meant for security vote, you should be able to tell Nigerians where how the security vote are being spent, especially when the state is completely consumed by insecurity. A state like Kogi, for instance, let me tell you. I use Kogi. I keep talking about Kogi because I know what the poor people are going through, passing through that state, but they're largely unreported. So I want to know what the state government are deploying the money for. There are states like not even, across the country. How exactly are they using the money? So we reserve the right to know how they spend this money. But just like you know, we have weak institutions here. We have our leaders, our rulers. Our leaders are our rulers. You know, they don't care what we feel. They just do it the way they want, so that you as a citizen. Well, if you ask questions, you become an enemy. So that's just the reality. And I just pray that our civil society organizations and those people who are interested in accountability and transparency should step up their games to ask questions and insist that answers should be provided so that Nigerians know where the money is being. It's not enough to say that 232 billion have been spent by states. Where this money is spent? How did it impact on the situation? Are we seeing reprieve? Are we seeing security challenges? Being confronted? Are we seeing results? These are important questions that every Nigerian ought to be asking at this time.
Absolutely. Mr. Chidi Omeje, I want to say thank you so much for joining us to have these conversations. And of course, we're sure that the citizens are seeing and asking the right questions as to if we're spending that much money, it needs to reflect in our livelihoods as an economy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.